looking for the end zone, and Jefferson! Touchdown, Minnesota! Here is McCaffrey, right side, breaks the tackle, good shifty move, gets it, still going! McCaffrey's gonna score! Don't have to necessarily get it all the way into the end zone. Gone for the end zone, it's a touchdown! T.J. Hawkinson! Scott, there he goes! Saquon to the end zone, touchdown Giants!
Let's get it.
Step back, throws the fade, back shoulder, Cooper Kupp got it! Cooper Kupp brings it in!
Good evening, Football DFS fans. Welcome back to Touchdowns for Dome. Mark, you are back fit and well.
Yes, I was really bad last week, I think. I don't know if I had the old little C. I didn't test myself. But yeah, it was pretty atrocious week last week. Yeah, I'm back for 1 week only, sadly, though, because then I'm off to the end of the season.
Is this you for the end of the season?
Yeah,
or-
this is me done till the end of the season today. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I can play on Sunday because I can get my line up before I go. But then I'm away
How long are you away for?
about a month.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, wow, yeah. So, literally, you'll be back for playoff time, won't you? So,
Oh yeah, I'll be back to play in
We'll
playoffs.
have
And I
a-
do like
before the-
playoffs.
and stuff, so yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was getting me all emotional then, Mark. I thought it was
Ah, well, you know, another season done for us, Nick.
another one in
Another
the
done.
book.
He thought he was going to have to put up with me.
Yeah.
I was gutted that you missed last week, actually, Mark, because I'd done a cracking little graphic for Jack's winning lineup. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't
But
see
it
it.
was,
I was in a
it
daze most last week.
Really,
wow.
really graphic.
Nice.
He really went to town.
Yeah.
But Moss there, I was like, Moss, Mark, come on.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
So that was for Jack last week.
Well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely no expense spared. Week 14?
15. Oh,
We were on week 14, weren't we? Week 14,
Yeah.
how did you get on?
I'll get my out
yeah.
of the way first. Worst week of the year. Pretty simple. To be fair, I've lucked out this year with DFS. I've not had many players go down injured during games, except last week, and that was one of them weeks. I had Justin Herbert go out, Browning for the the Bengals went down for a bit. The injury bug hit me last week, and then to top it all off, the Chargers receivers just decided that we get paid to catch the football, but let's just not do that. So it was just one of them weeks. I mean, it's what it is. I kind of went back over it. I don't think I would have really changed much. I didn't have a strong feel going into that slate. I had a lot of time as well Sunday to look at that slate, and I just didn't. I couldn't get to anything I particularly liked, and I was just like, let's just scale it back. And I scaled it back. I withdrew a load of entries out, and I was just like, obviously I still played, but it was mainly the Nat Coombs stuff, the Ashes League. I played one Millie Maker lineup and one double up. That's all I played last week. I just scaled it right back, and thankfully for me that worked out because it was a bad week all round. Like I say, the injury bug hit me really last week, and that was it. It was a poor week, but I made up for it last night. I made some profit last night, so I hit on the main slate. I had a good little lineup on there. Except I had Jordan Love in that quarterback on that, but the lineup still cashed, which was nice. And then I had a nice lineup in the Packers and the Giants game. I went proper weird build there. Like I've shared it on Twitter anyway today. I put Saquon Barkley in the captain spot, and that was it. I played 5 Packers behind him. So I thought the Packers would win. I just, Saquon was just a lock for me on that slate, really, because he was the nailed on running back that was going to get like 100% of the work. So, that was it, really. It was just last night was good. Sunday not so good. But we're on to a new week and a new slate, and hopefully there's a few teams on this week. We've got 2 slates again this week, and we've got Saturday games this week. But hopefully there's a few teams on the Sunday that I can actually get behind this week, because I did struggle of sitting. I say I had a lot of hours on Sunday, and I struggled to get to anything I liked.
Yeah, I didn't have as much time because I was busy on Sunday. Second week in a row, as a matter of fact, where I've been really quite busy and done exactly what you did, Jack. Just scaled back to literally the Nat Coombs contest, Ashes, and I think just literally one single entry in the main slate, and then I realised after the main slate had finished that I'd literally played the whole lineup was the 6 p.m. games, and I'd not put myself deep enough in the cash where I knew I was going to stay there. So I thought, you know what, I'll play the 9 p.m. games, and that was somehow a shambles, despite all the players that I thought would do well, pretty much did, and still didn't manage to build a lineup that cashed. So poor week for me, and being completely honest, I've had a few poor weeks now. It's not, I mean, it's balanced out by weeks where I've been massively up this season, to be fair. So it's of no concern whatsoever. It's still very much profit season, but yeah, a few poor weeks. I feel like fatigue's starting to kick in a little bit with it now as well, and I feel like we get to this point in the season. We've spoke about this in the past, Matt, but I feel like I get to this point in the season now, and I'm kind of like, I feel like I peaked too early. My wins come earlier in the season, and as the season goes on, I'm kind of like, like I'm just. It's a lot of time. There's a lot of time and dedication in this. Like you said, Jack, you went in the lab on Sunday and spent a few hours there.
I'll tell you, I spent 6 hours at my laptop on Sunday,
That's
which is just
crazy.
Yeah, I just I had the time. I just again I couldn't find anything. And you've mentioned it there. You've scaled back as well. It's very important to do that. We've mentioned that tons of times. It's just a good process. If you don't have a strong feel for something, don't play the slate, or just scale back and play the free contest or something. Don't commit to it if you don't have a strong feel for it. That is part of a good process to me. But yeah, I just It was a weird week. It was a low scoring week as well. There was some really bad football games. I was sitting here Sunday, and I'm not one for doing this with any sport that I'm playing DFS in either. Like, if I'm doing bad, like it doesn't turn me off the sport, so to speak. But I was sitting here Sunday, and there was some bad football games. Bad football games. That Vikings Raiders one, the Jets game against the Texans. It was just bad football all around. I was just like, yeah, I was sitting there. I was like, I might turn this off. that's how bad the games were. I never do that. So yeah, just important to recognise when you think a slate's going to be like that.
Yeah, Mark, you had a decent week though, didn't you?
I did. 6 hours, Jack, to have your worst week ever. Just like it's terrible. It's so frustrating. Yeah, I was all week. I was pretty much overstacking with the Bills on my main lineup, and then on Sunday, I heard this stat about Debo and Kittle playing together. If you imagine those two like a best ball team,
Yeah,
you'd end up with this amazing score pretty much every week, because one of them always does something fantastic and stuff. And then that maybe changed my thing. So I took out Gabe Davis, who we talked about earlier in the day. And yeah, so yeah, I did right. And then on the main one, I did fine. On the afternoon slate, I did even better. But the bit I remember is coming second in the ticket contest. That's the bit you always remember. You don't remember the profit on those games, on those slates, do you? So yeah, it was all right. I had Zach Moss, which is like, I still think you just have to keep playing Zach Moss whilst he's getting 90% of snaps. But
the thing with Zach Moss, right? He's had 16 carries inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah. And but if you knew that before those last 2 weeks, he'd be
You'd think,
100% in all your
yeah,
lineups.
exactly, yeah.
And I think whether you play last 2 weeks, just because he's in a pretty not unique position, but yeah, certainly was last week. I think it's good process if you play him or you fade him. I just
Yeah.
think cash you play him, it's a good process. If you play him in GPPs, it's good process. If you fade him in GPPs, it's good process. It's just those sorts of players that doesn't happen very often in a season where I don't think it matters to the quality of your lineup if you play him or not.
Yeah.
You can make
You
a
know,
case with it. He
we
just gets
talked
so many carries.
we talked about that last week with
Yeah,
my Ashes build. So
yeah.
obviously, I know you wanted to.
Did it do well? Did it do well, Jack?
It won there. It won. It won. And another one for the Hall of Fame. Let's put it that way.
I got my last week to get to do the trifecta for us lot this Sunday. That's my last chance.
No, but technically, there is other ways for you to do that, but we can speak about that.
Yeah.
But no, I know you wanted to crucify me with that, but I'd got
Not remotely, no.
The pick was fine because
Yeah.
we mentioned it last week. I'd got completely different with my stack to everyone else in that field, so the pick was fine.
It's a good pick. Zach Moss has been a good pick no matter what the last 2 weeks. He wasn't expensive enough this week to make him a bad pick in any way.
No, yeah,
He just wasn't. Doesn't matter what ownership or whatever. One thing I've noticed, you've reminded me, Jack, just there, is obviously we play Ashes and NC, which are primarily UK-based contests, I think, possibly exclusively so. The overstacking has got very, very trendy. I don't know whether I think obviously we've invented the overstack on this show because we talk about it.
I mentioned it week one.
Yeah, we did. We mentioned it quite a lot, the overstack, and I've seen quite a lot of overstacking going on. I mean, this week wasn't the week for it. The other thing is, Nick, just to temper everyone's excitement about me doing well, as well as my main lineup, I always have a handful of other little ones for just GPPs. I did actually have a Vikings Raiders game on slot.
Oh god.
Which beforehand, process-wise, seemed to make a lot of sense. Obviously.
Well, I played Hawkinson in quite a few. That's another reason I failed last week. I played Hawkinson in quite a few lineups last week, and because I thought it'd be fine. I thought Dobbs would sort of get back to his normal level, get loads of targets towards the tight end position, especially with Jefferson back as well.
Yeah.
And as I just said, that Adam Schefter, Minnesota, has just announced its new starting quarterback, so Dobbs is not starting this week. But yeah,
cool. He's fallen back down to earth, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, I mean he is what he is, isn't he? It's like Nick Foles, isn't it? It's the same thing. But yeah, I had a lot of Hawkinson, and I mean that game was. I would never go back and watch that. Put it that way. I felt
my best
sorry
lineup
for anyone in that stadium.
My best lineup had the Vikings defense, so I was quite happy with how that was in the end.
Yeah. But that's the only thing I got right all week was the defense. I played the Bears defense in every lineup.
Yeah, they were the best cheap defense, weren't they?
And I mentioned it because David was on. He was going on about Goff, wasn't he, in our chat? And I was like,
you were like, no, not outside.
Never outside. Never play Goff outside. And it was fine. It works out perfectly.
They're falling off a bit of a cliff, the Lions, really.
Yeah, they seem to have got away from their ground game, their ground and pound game, and or teams have worked it out. One of the two is, I don't want to give the Rams too much praise, but they should have won that game against the Ravens. And I mean, they don't establish the run that you keep establishing that run with Kyron. The Rams won't be too far away from the playoffs. I wish the Giants would stop winning. I tell you.
I think they will get there, looking at the schedule that they've got left, depending on the other games. But yeah, watching that was hard because if you're going to run on first down and get 6 yards, don't run again. Pass. Run the ball again, because then if nothing happens on second down, which is exactly what happened, you back yourself into a corner where you absolutely have to throw on third down. You're not running on third down when you need 4 yards and it's overtime and you need that first down. Why not see how far you can get with the second down, then decide, are you going to pass, are you going to run? It's then 4 down territory, but what happens? Third down, penalty, marches us back 5 yards. Thanks a lot, and that was that. But yeah, I agree. We should have won that game. I'm still not 100% convinced by the Ravens, but it was a good game. One thing that did please me this week was a friend of mine, actually, who I went to the game at Wembley with. He won both Nat Coombs contests, so he won the free and he won the
Nice.
$5, and he finished fourth in the Ashes as well,
Very nice.
which is nice. He's never stepped foot on DraftKings up until this season. And that's his biggest win that he's had over the season as well. I don't even think he really consumes all that much fantasy content. I think he reads a couple of bits, but he doesn't listen to much in terms of podcasts and stuff like that. He doesn't use optimizers. He doesn't really look at projections. He goes off a lot of gut feel because he showed me his lineups and he said, "What do you think of that?" And I've given him my opinion in the past and said, "I'd maybe look at changing that," or "I'm not sure. He might be on a snap count, whatever." He goes off a lot of gut, and yeah, nice to see that. I think if he's consumed any fantasy content at all, it would just be ours. So
why are we not reviewing this lineup quickly? We could do that.
You know what? In fairness, the lineup, and I've not got it to actually share on the screen, but I can tell you what it kind of looks like.
Go on, tell us what the lineup is, and then we can have a little 3 minute discussion on it and crucify it.
So he went with Brock Purdy, quarterback.
Yep.
He stacked him with Deebo Samuel. Now, what I did like, and the big stack, saw a lot of Purdy stacked with C-Mac, stacked with Deebo or Ayuk, stacked with Smith and Jigba. And I think that was a game where you didn't have to have a bring back. We've said this before. You didn't have to play a bring back.
Yeah.
But what I liked is he didn't play Smith and Jigba, who was the cheapest wide receiver, cheapest kind of starting wide receiver 3 on Seattle. Instead, he started Tyler Lockett, who in the Ashes was only 5% owned. And he was productive, 40.9.
You just reminded me of that game. Drew Lock turned into I was going to swear them, but Drew Lock turned into Joe Montana. I was just like, what is this? Like I'm seeing here. It was crazy, but yeah, he was locked on to Lockett.
Yeah. So yeah, Purdy, Samuel, bring back of Lockett. His running backs were Travis Etienne at 1.44% ownership and Joe Mixon at 25.9. So he had some chalk there. And then he had Zay Flowers, Gerald Everett at tight end.
Yep.
And then he has another small stack of DJ Moore in the flex with the Bears defense.
Nice. Yeah, I quite like the lineup there. If you go back to the ETN play, I actually think that's a really good play. I know it was against the Browns, but Trevor Lawrence was injured going into that game. There was obviously, I didn't even see that. So that's, it's just come to my head now. There's obviously quite a clear path. You've got an injured quarterback already, that there was a clear path for ETN to succeed because, the Jags were going to probably run more than what they would normally. So I actually like the ETN play, even though it was in a tougher matchup.
The Cleveland D has dropped off against the run, I think, over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I seem to remember hearing that last week. It's not like what it was.
But no, again, ETN's probably, I've not got the stats share in front of me, but he's probably seen about 80% of the work in that backfield, like easily.
How many did he score, ETN? He wasn't even on my radar.
He scored 17.2.
Yeah, that was fine.
Which last week was fine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Everett was fine because, as I say, I had a lot of Everett as well. So he was just, I know he was the one charge that was actually catching the ball. So he was fine. Like I said, I like the Lockett pick. It's a good bring back. I think he probably lucked out that Drew Lock come into that game because he just seemed fixated with Lockett once he come in. I like the Mixon pick as well. Again, they got a rookie quarterback there. in Browning. He goes out injured. You get the backup come in. Again, he's lucked out a little bit. I played Mixon in the lineup as well. I know Mixon got about 28 points, didn't he, Nick?
Mixon got 21.5.
21 points. I knew he was in the 20s, sorry. So, yeah, I mean, I like that pick as well. It's a good lineup. It's a solid lineup all around that. And, DJ Moore's a great pick as well because Justin Fields is just fixated with him. He won't.
He's literally all he goes for. I mean, he has
occasionally you get a bit of commit, don't you? But it's normally he's fixated with DJ Moore.
Yeah, he actually had what makes his day look a little bit better is he had a rushing touchdown, but you've always got that with DJ Moore where you can kind of use him in that way as well, bit gadgety. What I liked as well, and it was a little bit chalky at 14.39% ownership, but Burrs D was one of the cheapest on the slate.
It was the second cheapest.
Yeah. And when you look at the Burrs D in recent weeks, they've not been conceding a lot of points and they've been turning the ball over quite a bit.
Yeah, got the most turnovers since week 11. And with a bye, that's with a bye included.
Since they've got Montez Sweat, they've stepped up. I mean, I'm pretty sure since they've got him, they've been number one against the run. They shut down the run.
All the stick they got for giving up a second-round pick for Sweat as well.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it's not going to, I don't think it's going to particularly impact on the season, but it's clearly transformed the D.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, he's made a big difference, and I did see that with the rushing, and obviously that's kind of been a strength of the Lions in recent weeks and over the season. But the Lions have faltered as well in recent weeks, and at his core, despite the fact he is a good quarterback and often a good fantasy quarterback, Jared Goff is still Jared Goff. Like Jared Goff still has turnovers in him. It's within him. Like so,
if you get him outside in the cold, then he falls apart outside in the cold.
That's coming back to haunt him that he's a better home quarterback than road quarterback.
Yeah,
I feel this all comes under the banner, and every year we've done a show together, Nick. I'm pretty sure this has come up. Is the fact that the nature of the teams towards the end of the season is not always the same as at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are making potentially DFS and fantasy decisions based on what happened in the first 6 weeks of the season, or the first 8 weeks of the season, or the first 10 weeks of the season. And due to various factors, injuries generally, or people returning from injuries, some things go up, some things come down. It's like, Cleveland, the Chicago D's gone up, for example. And like the Detroit Lions running game doesn't seem to be as it was before. And so you have to kind of, Jack, you're all saying about getting rid of emotion and stuff when choosing DFS lineups, but I think you also have to have a little bit of a memory of a goldfish in some respect as well.
Yeah, you do. And the emotion part, like you say, I see it so many times on Twitter of people moaning about players. Oh, I'm never playing this player again. Well, you must love losing money then, because that's the fastest way to lose money in my book. You need to if you're going to play DFS, you can't have emotions.
You don't have any, Jack. That's just you're a robot.
I don't. I've trained my mind over the years to
It's a little lump of coal where his heart's meant to be.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
But no, it was nice to see that because, like I said, he doesn't absorb a massive amount of content, but the stuff he does is probably just the odd article. Maybe he might have listened to us at some point this year, and every so often he asks for my advice on a lineup. So it was nice to see him build a lineup like that because he's kind of done a lot of that off his own back, which just shows that you don't need to go out there and pay a fortune for content to win. So there you go, which we preached this season as well.
It was a nice lineup. I like it a lot. And congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't have many of these lineups. I certainly don't have any in the playoffs, but best ball playoffs are coming up, Jack. What are you? Like 100% or something?
120%, mate.
120%.
No, I wish, but I do have a couple of good lines that have got through. My highest scoring one was 2,151 points, which is pretty good. I've seen a lot of stuff floated around today. A lot of people are around the sort of high 1,900, like 80 mark. That's sort of an average. I mean, I've got a couple of lineups like that have got through as well, but I think if you're in the 2,000s, you're going to be doing okay. So yeah, I've got quite a few lineups through. I'm quite happy with the best ball. I mean, we've spoke about this before, but me and Mark both approached it the same way. It was funny. We didn't, as Marcus says, we didn't speak to each other before we done it. I do think me and Mark play DFS and things like this in similar ways.
Some degree.
Yes, to some degree.
Yeah, some degree we do. Yeah.
Before you said that, Jack, just tell anyone that's listening then, because there'll be best ball players that listen to this.
Yeah.
What was a lot of the stuff that you guys were seeing in the off season, and what did you do differently? Like, how did you draft your lineups instead? Because something's obviously gone well and something's obviously worked from what you've done. So what kind of stood you out from the crowd from what you were seeing?
Yes, so we mentioned it. We like this you can use, like, this is the same sort of thing as projected ownership, right? Like you look at projected ownership, you go, I don't know, let's just say it's the Lions versus the Chargers, and you got Herbert versus Goff in Detroit. But the Detroit side's getting all the ownership. I would then pivot onto the other side of it. That's kind of how, but I approach a lot of things. So with best ball, all the content that I was seeing very early was, you need to draft like 5 wide receivers in the first 7-8 rounds. And I've never ever played best ball like that at all, to be fair, just because like, I won the first UK FFCC Murph's comp, the FFCC, and that's the best ball, large best ball field. And all right, I was using projections for it. I was actually used Steve's projections for that. I've spoken about that before, but I approached all my best balls like that early on. I was approaching the same way. I was just drafting all of these boom or bust wide receivers towards the end of the draft, like at the time, Deshaun Jackson. We could use Gabe Davis as an example. Now in the NFL, he's another boom or bust receiver. He's, mentioned it in the value report. He's going to put up stupid points one week and he's going to score you 0 the next. That's just what you're going to get. So yeah, I kind of saw that at the start of the season, that people were going very wide receiver heavy. I've always been a running back guy to draft running backs early within drafts, unless it's super flex, and I just go on full on rampage of quarterbacks. But I've always took running backs early in drafts because that is the position that gets injured the most in the NFL. I mean, look at all the running backs we've lost this year. Like, Nick Chubb went down early. James Conner's been out. James Conner's a workhorse back for the Cardinals. He's been out for quite a big chunk of the year and just come back. And I think, Mark, you've probably drafted quite a lot of him from the drafts that I saw of yours. To be fair, I was getting onto James Conner quite a lot. But I saw that. I thought, well, I'm just going to flip it the other way then. I'm going to draft 5 running backs in the first 7 rounds, while everyone else is drafting 5 wide receivers in the first 7 rounds. And it's worked out nicely. I had a little bit of a dip about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've not got as many through as I was initially looking like I was going to get through, but I've got a good chunk through, and we'll see how far we go into this playoff schedule now. And I've got some good teams there. A lot of Lions. I've got a lot of Ravens and things like that. So we'll see how far we get with it. But I've got a lot of healthy running backs. That's the main thing. I've got Alvin Kamara in like a big chunk of Alvin Kamara in lineups. I've got a lot of Rashid White from the Buccaneers. So yeah, I've got a lot of healthy running backs within my team. Watch one of them go down this week. But yeah, that's kind of how I approach it, Nick. I just get different to the field, and I think Mark's the same as me, pretty much.
I was exactly the same. All the content, I was like you, Jack, consuming a lot of content from everywhere. Everyone saying wide receiver, etc. So I did this similar to you, As did our friend of the show, Josh Waldridge. He was doing something similar as well. And I caught up with him today. He's had an absolutely fantastic advancement rate.
Good.
And doing the same as... So all three of us are using the same technique, style, strategy, whatever you want to call it. And I've done pretty crap. Which goes to show, which to me... up until about week 7 or 8, I was doing brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly, and then I just got destroyed by injuries and stuff. And all, I had quite a few sort of tight end heavies, which are like Andrews and Kelsey's or Andrews and whoever and stuff and things like that. And all those sort of ones did not work out this time. For me, I don't think that the way that the mark strategy, as I call it, I don't think that particularly works. I just think that there's so much, you have to still get the right players, you still have to be lucky with injuries to some degree and all that sort of thing. So that's 3 of us. Two of you have done fantastically well with this. I've done exactly the same as you. Same knowledge about players and everything. Hasn't worked out. This... yeah, if you think about it, so much content is also focused on hitting that random player in the last 10 rounds.
Yeah.
When there's 120 picks in the last 10 rounds, and then you can think of maybe 1 or 2 players over the last 3 or 4 years who've worked out well from there to be special players, and everybody else is of much. Just none of the content sort of really added up to me. But as it turns out, I haven't done very well with my advancements, but exactly the same thing as Jack was doing, the opposite of what everybody else was doing. And funnily enough, I don't know if this is your experience as well, Jack, it was pretty obvious that's what was going on once you're in the drafts as well.
Oh yeah, no, it's so obvious. And I remember being in a couple of drafts where I was implementing this tactic, and they must have been, I was doing these when I was sitting in my van actually before starting work. So there was obviously a lot of Americans in this draft, and I remember one particular one where this guy obviously knew what I'd done with the 5 running backs to start, and you could see he was fuming because of the picks that he was making after. Like, he just went running back heavy. Like, he was just, you could tell either because he was next to me in the draft. You could tell I wasn't doing it to annoy him. Like, it was just my strategy, but you could just tell it annoyed him the way that I'd gone down that road. Like, it completely messed up his draft board or whatever. But yeah, I would always go against the grain and stuff like that. And as I said, I've always been a guy that will draft running backs early in drafts, whatever draft it is. That position gets injured the most in the NFL. You can take your punts later on down the line. That's fine. What I didn't like this year, that I've read a lot of content, and it's the new thing. It's the dynasty thing, isn't it? I've got to have this rookie at the end of the draft. I've got to have that rookie. He's got the chance. If, I don't know. I can't even remember. I can't remember the rookies that were going towards the end of the draft. But it's like there's the chance that this so and so gets injured, so he's got this pathway to this. So it's like, okay, you keep drafting guys like that, and then I'll just draft the running backs that I know that I've seen in the NFL before, like Gus Edwards. I've got like 90% Gus Edwards that I know that they will pound on the goal line because they don't care if he gets injured. For starters, the Ravens. The Ravens haven't used a massive amount of draft capital on him. They're just going to pound him on the goal line. I think they'll probably continue to do that. Like, as good as Keaton Mitchell is, they probably know Keaton Mitchell's going to be really good. But once they get down to the goal line, I think they're just going to use their other backs just because they don't want to get their star RB, their new up-and-coming RB, injured. So yeah, I noticed that a lot. I read that a lot. People drafting rookies, and that's the dynasty. That's just the dynasty mindset. You just have to have a clear mind when you're going into these things, I think. And just, I will always take the players at the end of the draft that I've seen in the NFL before to rookies.
Only you just reminded me as well, Jack. I only had about a dozen lineups anyway, and most of those were tickets, as you know.
Yeah.
I had 7 or 8 of those lineups were Nick Chubb, first round pick.
Yeah.
You reminded me, is like, to be honest, thinking about it now, the fact I was doing so well after week 7 or 8 probably was a testament to how the rest of the drafting, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one thing of best ball, which I don't do enough of these best balls. If you're going to be somebody who does like 50, 100, whatever it is and stuff, I suspect Josh is one of those. I do think you need to think about your whole portfolio as a whole, exposure.
Yeah. Most definitely.
When you're only doing a dozen or something like me, I'm happy to take a stance on a Nick Chubb in the first rounds.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't work out because of injury, not because it was a bad pick.
Yeah.
You know, another year I could be progressing half the lineups and stuff. You know, it's
No, you're
yeah.
right.
I think.
Mark. If you're
Sorry.
gonna go, if you're right, if you're gonna go like 150 max into these best balls, then you need to look at your portfolio altogether, and you can't be draft. I mean, you could, because if it worked out, like
Yeah.
to be fair, if I was playing like that, as I play quite aggressively like that, I would probably go one way, and then that would be it. I'd thought, I'd live and die by it.
Yeah. By the
But
way, yeah. Sorry.
go on.
No, I was just going to say, we talked about self-fulfilling prophecies, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
I think, well, the one when Nick, you weren't there and stuff, and I think most of the best ball theory is based on self-fulfilling prophecies. As in, if 80%, I'll use a silly number again, sorry, if 100% of the drafts, they start with 5 wide receivers in the first 5 picks, then 100% chance that the winning lineup will be that style of lineup, etc. So the problem with DraftKings is you don't get any figures. You can't get any figures of how everybody's drafting across the whole contest to know what actually does well, progresses well. And again, that piece of maths was in my head all the time during the best ball season. Sorry, is the fact that everybody's getting told to do one particular way because last year so many were in the final of that sort. That's probably because there was that many more of those types of lineups, you know. So I just think something for next year, people just take advantage of it. Look at what the content's saying. I think I'd be amazed with you, Jack, if the content this year is so blatantly one way, though, because it was everywhere. The wide receiver thing was everywhere.
Mark, I really wouldn't. I've seen this over years and years of people doing content for redraft leagues and dynasty leagues, and it's like you have to drive. Like dynasty is a good one, a good example, because everyone in that is like you have to draft wide receivers early, always early in dynasty because the running back position is so volatile. These guys get injured, blah blah blah. Dynasty leagues are set over multiple years. I've never ever drafted a dynasty league like that either. I draft exactly the same throughout all my leagues. So I would be very surprised if it does. It normally goes one way or the other. Next year, it might be you need to draft all your running backs early. So then you might want to pivot onto the wide receivers.
Yeah, exactly.
But it never balances. It always goes one way,
Yeah.
that way, or like that, basically. So
yeah, Jack. Next year, let's make a promise to each other. Maybe we talk about this before we start doing it.
yeah, maybe we will. We will.
Maybe we'll actually talk about it next year.
I'll get the crystal ball out as well to find out what the players are going to get injured.
Yeah, that would help me. That really would help me this year. It's like, by the way, I'm never picking Nick Chubb ever again.
Oh, really? Let your emotions come into it. You do
that. Yeah. There you go.
There's something as well to be said for the draft strategy there, Jack, where there's another draft that you did, which I think was the Scott Fish Bowl draft, where you took multiple quarterbacks in continuous rounds. Obviously, it's a little bit different because I don't know if it is Superflex, but yeah. There's more, it's more advantageous to do that anyway. But I think like drafting the way that you have, like you said, if you're drafting with other people and then you notice that their own strategy has changed, like what you've done has thrown them completely off whatever kind of draft strategy they might have gone in with, and then do they start making panic picks? Does it start a trend of, right, well, he's picked that, so I need to pick that, and then it's a knock-on kind of domino effect across the draft of someone else being like, oh my god, he's picked him, so I need to pick this guy. And like, so I think there is some strategy there in the actual kind of way that you've drafted in terms of how it could also impact other people in that draft to your advantage. But that's one of the reasons that you draft the way you do.
Yeah, look, Scott Fish Bowl is a charity league at the end of the day. So the chances of winning that are very slim. Obviously, I go into it. I'd love to win it. It would be great to win something like that. But the main aspect of that league is it's a charity league, and we were having a live draft, and I was like, it's a live draft. I'm just going to have some fun with it. Like I knew most of the people I was drafting with. I then got put next to Rich. I know Rich, so I was just like, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with him. I'm going to try and mess with his head a bit. It didn't work because he ended up picking Brock Purdy and Baker Mayfield. So he lucked out. I had Aaron Rodgers, got injured. I had Bryce Young, he was terrible. So it worked out in his favour the way I drafted. But stuff like that is meant to be fun. You can't take stuff like that seriously when there's money involved. Then I'm a lot more serious, and I wouldn't be doing stuff like that. Put it that way.
Murph's still going in the Scott Fish Bowl as well.
He is, and he was in
He's
my
still
division.
going.
So congratulations to him.
The thing about the charity ones is you read the rules on the scoring. Like the FFC this year, I made last 16 FFCC this year. I think I took 5 tight ends and 4 kickers in my first 11 or 13 picks or something like that, which everybody else thought was mad, but that's basically what got me to that far. And again, injuries hit me with all the tight ends, like Goddard, etc. But yeah.
Speaking of name dropping Rich there, Jack. I guess.
Yeah, we don't want to give him too many compliments. Let's rip his lineup to pieces.
I guess we've got a lineup to review. So
can't we just replay the other many times we've reviewed his lineup this year or game day?
Can't we do the second place lineup, because technically that won the same amount of money, didn't it? So
for far less effort.
Whilst I'm getting this up, Jack, you maybe want to tell the listeners / viewers about the promo that we have with Fantasy Gameday.
Yes, so you can use our code TDS4D, and that will get you a free entry after your initial deposit and entry into one of their games. And I believe they've got £100 bonus up for grabs this week as well on the prize pool.
Very good. So Rich has cashed in this quite a few times this season, and I think this is his second win, but
his second win.
But he technically didn't win the last one. He won the same amount of money because that's how game day works. But I think it was Tom's lineup that topped, and Rich's I think was.
Yes, that was it. Yeah. Yes, we won't give him too much credit.
No, so it's his first outright win. Let's say that.
I do. I love the Mike Evans thing. I'm actually disappointed that you didn't build this on a flat Earth.
Yeah, this should be a flat Earth.
I was going to put the Hall of Fame in the background, but just put Canton, Ohio in there. But I mean, I was shocked to the core when I opened this lineup and there was no Mike Evans starting in it. But it's just as well because he was poor last week.
He must be the only person who played Breece Hall.
Well, I mean,
that's a homer pick, isn't it?
Yeah, complete homer pick.
We don't see ownership, do we, on game day? But I imagine his ownership was very low because Breece Hall has had some really poor weeks as of late. He's a week late on Laporta. Jack obviously got him on his high peak week.
Wasn't playing the Saints. You need to target these tight ends against the Saints unless they play for the Panthers.
Interestingly, this lineup finishes top with a score of 186. Last week's lineup was 223, maybe something like that. So quite a drop off in scoring this week, which I think is kind of a true reflection of the week itself. Like you said, Jack, there was some poor games this week. So let's have a little look at the lineup then. McCaffrey at captain, who is becoming a popular choice again there in that spot, though not necessary like he was earlier in the season.
He was a bit of a letdown last week.
He was. He'd have been better served captain in Deebo Samuel, who he stacks in with. So Deebo scores 34 points outright.
So I did. I captained Deebo last week.
Jake Browning at quarterback. He does a game stack with Michael Pittman. And then he has some individual plays of Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Breece Hall, and Sam Laporta. So there is some correlation in this lineup, an actual team correlated stack and then a game stack. and then some individual plays that probably, like I like Bijan Robinson. I played him in my DraftKings lineup. I played him in my Fantasy Game Day lineup because he has been seeing a lot more of the ball in recent weeks. But thoughts on the lineup, fellas?
Naked Browning is a big
It's an
surprise.
interesting.
Yeah, an interesting one. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, James Cook was in most of my lineups last week, as was Debo, as I mentioned already about the Debo Kittle thing. No, it's fine. I mean, yeah, Brees Hall just an inspired pick there. If it wasn't a homer pick, that's just an inspired pick. Getting 26. There wasn't. I say Debo was the best player to have captain, but just as you said earlier, Jack, about low scoring, another one of those weeks where you didn't have to have the captain right, as it were, for a better phrase. And that's been proven by McCaffrey for all his cost, only scoring 32 points, and 7 out of those 16 points came in that first play. So, yep, you can't really argue with it. One,
I actually, I don't want to give him too much credit, especially if he's watching.
just
But,
don't then. Just don't.
I hate the lineup, Rich. It's absolutely awful all round.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind the Browning naked pick there. I think that's probably like the value saving option on this team here. Like you can see the rest of the team, he's got a load of studs in it. I actually really, again, going back to it now, I wish I'd thought of it. I had enough hours to think of it. I didn't, but I actually really like the Brees Hall and Bijan picks together with the same game correlation there. That game was in the cold outside in New York. It was wet as well. Obviously, Zach Wilson gives the Jets a bit of a boost. I know he's not spectacular, but I actually caught quite a bit of their game. They were much better with him under center than the crap that they trotted out the last 2 weeks. So I actually really like the game stack there, the correlation between them two. Again, it's an outside game. That's great. I love the double 49ers picks there. Debo's always great. Debo's one of them players as well. He's different to Gabe Davis. He doesn't really catch them bombs down the field, but he's one of them DFS players that can nuke the slate or will score you 0.
And he's got a flaw. No, Debo's got a flaw, though, I would suggest. I suggest Debo's got more of a flaw than
I think there's a lot
Davis.
of weapons. I think there's a lot of weapons in that offense, and I not for me. Not for me, but
better.
I like the lineup all around. As I say, I think we're seeing this more and more now with Fantasy Game Day. So maybe I need to change my strategy. We're seeing where there's not a lot of stacking going on at the minute, and these lineups are winning. So I actually like what he's done. The cheap quarterback, and it's allowed him to literally jam in a ton of studs all around it. So I actually, the more I think of it, I don't want to give him credit, but I really do like the Brees Hall and the Bijan picks.
This feels a bit like a cash lineup, doesn't it, if you look at it?
It does.
Yeah, it does. And we talked earlier in the season, didn't we, when naked Brock Purdy won the Millie Maker and stuff, Again, it's every year it's different with DFS. People learn, like you say, we talk about overstacks and stuff. Maybe next year people are just going to thinking about quarterbacks, just without stacking them and stuff. Maybe that'll be the next trend.
I mentioned it week 1. You never stop learning in this game.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, there are already instances of that, Matt, where you could say, and we've spoken about it before, there's already instances on that where it happens week to week. Like, if you're going to play Lamar Jackson, you don't necessarily need to stack him with anyone. If you're going to play Justin Fields, granted, stacking him with DJ Moore this season has been money, but historically you haven't had to stack him with anyone. I think it applies to a certain type of quarterback, i.e. a rushing quarterback, but it probably also applies to a cheap quarterback, because if you're just plugging that quarterback in because he's cheap, and if he's productive enough, then the salary that allows you elsewhere in your lineups is still a viable build, I think. So I like what he's done, because I think Browning will have been cheap, very cheap on game day. I really like the Debo pick, and actually in the last few weeks, if I've put any 49ers in, I've been putting Debo in over Ayuk. More so because of how they use Debo in that offense. I think though he might not be targeted as much as Ayuk is, he gets a lot of the kind of work out of the like backfield work, screens, stuff like that. It feels a little bit more versatile. And I just like that he can score points from kind of anywhere they line him up on that offense.
Yeah.
I've said Pittman is a bit kind of rich tea, plain digestive. I think I called him earlier in the season. But I tell you what, he has put together like nigh on Pro Bowl kind of numbers this season, and wouldn't surprise me if he even gets voted in there. You see a lot of I've been seeing in recent weeks because he had a week where he was heavily targeted but had a few drops. But Josh Downs keeps finding his way into quite a few lineups because he ends up being the cheaper of the Colts receivers. But Pittman is by far the heavily targeted and is by far the more productive of the two week to week. That consistency has pretty much been the whole season. Don't mind McCaffrey in the captain spot because we've seen what can happen there when he does go off. James Cook has been productive over the last couple of weeks, so again, don't mind that too much there either. Bijan, like I said, I played him myself. Breece Hall completely went under my radar. Laporta wasn't really on my radar this week, but I understand the pick. So yeah, good scoring, like you said, Jack. There's we've seen a couple of lineups like this now where. And we've probably, looking back, a bit of reflection, we've probably been a little bit too harsh on some of those lineups because we've kind of been, don't get me wrong, some of those lineups have literally been like one stack and a team of individuals. There's at least like game stacks throughout this lineup with an actual team stack in there as well. So I think there is more correlation through this lineup. But it shows, like you said, that, on any given week, you could have a big stack that gets you over the line, or something like this could also get you over the line as well.
That's enough as a loving. We hate the lineup. We think it's terrible. Don't know one. Yeah. Cheerio.
Yeah. Very good. Right, we've overstayed our welcome, fellas. So you can find me on Twitter at Nick of Wigan. Jack, Mark, where can the listeners find you?
At _SMRF.
JH for Doe Media.
Very good. Mark, have a good Christmas from the listeners and viewers. I'm sure they'll be wishing you that. And we will see you again in January as we bring a close to the season early February. And then we're on to the golf again, fellas, and I can't wait for that. But for everyone else, we will see you next Tuesday.